wars, that talk is very real. It is happening. Do you think that's an indication of how far down this road of tyranny we have already gone and found ourselves?
Well, there's no more fundamental rule of law than the Constitution. And when you amend the Constitution without following the process identified in Article 6 of the Constitution, which is to obtain the consent of the American people to an amendment, when you don't do that, and when you instead just alter the Constitution by making specific provisions dead letters, by reinterpreting provisions to mean the opposite of what they were intended to mean, when you do those sorts of things, you erode and destroy the legitimacy of the government. And you invariably invite the very kinds of revolutions that the Founding Fathers feared would be necessary. I mean, Thomas Jefferson was the most strident advocate of revolution. He said that if the United States didn't have a revolution every 20 years, he would be fearful for the defense of liberty, because he invariably thought that governors would rule corruptly, that they would pursue their own self-interest at public expense and would deny people their rights. And Adams and Alexander Hamilton believed that the electoral process would be sufficient. Well, now we're very much testing that. I mean, either the government of the United States will come into
30 seconds,
conformity.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Either the government of the United States will conform with the Constitution, or it will provoke a reaction from the American people, the likes of which we have not seen.
All right, very important words from Jonathan Emord, author of the new book, Restore the Republic. We'll be back with more interview with Jonathan Emord on the other side of this break. Stay with us here on The Alex Jones Show, and thank you for tuning in. A lot of breaking news today, a lot of important information. Don't go away. We'll be right back after. There's an important article I'd like to bring your attention to on Infowars.com. We quoted from it earlier about Patty Finn. This is the attorney who's being basically just completely attacked for defending the rights of parents to avoid vaccinating their children. The article is written by Kurt Linderman Sr. Kurt Linderman was a guest before. He's a very, very outspoken father about vaccine rights for parents. And the article is entitled New York 9th Judicial Committee Attacks Vaccine Parental Rights Attorney. So check out that headline on Infowars.com. Lots of other news coming up there today from Kurt Nimmo, Paul Joseph Watson, and many of the other outstanding writers. Also, a programming note, I apologize to the listeners. I misquoted the everything special price. It should be $99.95 as it has always been. That's the everything special, $379 plus worth of videos, everything that Alex Jones has produced for $99.95. I misquoted the price earlier, and I apologize for that. There's actually a lot going on today, as you might imagine. Now, we are continuing our interview with Jonathan Emord, author of Restore the Republic, and just before the break, he was talking about the breakdown of the Republic and how these federal agencies are growing out of control, becoming lawless, renegade agencies. Where do you want to pick it up, Jonathan, from there?
Well, both Republicans and Democrats who are economists, Alice Rivlin, for example, from the Clinton administration, and Dan Walker, former Comptroller General of the United States, agree that federal spending at the present levels is unsustainable, that the government simply cannot exist if we are to maintain these spending levels. We have a $15.5 trillion national debt. That's to rise to about $23 trillion by 2021. The interest on the debt alone by 2021 will be over $700 billion a year. When you look at the present levels of spending, they exceed the national debt exceeds the gross domestic product, and the trajectory for future spending is to cause that division to even grow wider. So it's impossible to sustain this government, and the politics of spending are still very much alive. Government politicians have absolutely no hesitation, such as this president, to offer more and more extraordinarily expensive spending programs, and no serious effort whatsoever to reduce the cost of the government or the size and the scope of it. And everything that is private is invariably becoming either public or subject to heavy government regulation and control, stultifying the growth of the marketplace. So at the same time that the government very much needs more revenue in order to finance this vast expansion of the government that seems endless, it is destroying the very source of its revenue.
But Jonathan, here on Infowars, all of us here, Alex especially, talks about that is intentional. That's the plan to destroy America's
economy. It's a parasite
economy
upon the market. But it's a problem with the current rate of growth.
I'm sorry. We had a little blip in the audio there. We're saying that
it is to make everything private public.
Yeah. Okay. You just said to make everything private public. Exactly. Government controlling the economy. What about the destruction of the economy, the destruction of the private sector, the destruction of innovation, the shifting of jobs forcefully outside the country? Do you think that's deliberate, or is it just really poor planning by people in Washington?
No, of course it's deliberate. These people have spent decades in social engineering. I mean, and in economic planning. They have spent lifetimes, these bureaucrats have spent lifetimes involved in precisely this kind of expansion of the regulatory state. You know, none of this would have been possible had economic liberty been entitled to full constitutional protection as it was before the 1930s. It was in the 1930s that the courts reduced the level of economic protection for economic liberty to a bare minimum, ushering in the regulatory state. So much so that right off the bat, right out of the starting gates, the National Recovery Act had the President of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt, setting wages, prices, putting controls on production, determining the quantity of units to be produced during the Depression. And this precedent has been expanded and used over and over again by Republicans and Democrats alike. So much so that really it is the rare exception that individuals in the marketplace make decisions that are uninfluenced by federal regulation. Almost every decision a person makes in the marketplace is in one way or another influenced by the direction that the government would have them go in. So is it any surprise to us then that we're suffering the same kind of economic travails that ultimately brought communist China to capitalism? No,
right.
But it is shocking that the United States around the world preaches
stay with us, Jonathan.
Capitalism.
Sorry to cut you off there. We're about to go to break. The book is called Restore the Republic. You can find it at emord.com. That's EMORD.com, or on Amazon, other places. Stay with us here. We'll be right back on the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, filling in, and we've got Jonathan Emord staying with us for another 30 minutes. More information about the Republic. Stay with us. I was in Houston this weekend, and I hadn't been off my ranch for several months. I mean, not into a major city. Well, I guess I was in Dallas. What am I thinking? But I mean, I hadn't really, stayed overnight any place off the ranch, and I couldn't believe how much trouble Houston is going to be in a collapse scenario. Places like LA, places like New York, Chicago. These cities are in so much trouble, and we as a nation are in so much trouble if things start to fall apart. I mean, there's no place to grow food in these cities. There's no way to get water. There's no way to be safe. There's probably not going to be any law or order in a breakdown, even like a grid down scenario. But Jonathan Emord, our guest, continues with us now to talk about what looks like what could be the failing of the Republic if we stay on this current path. And then how can we stop that from happening? How can we put us on a new course to restoring the Republic and saving America? Because America is a great country. There's so much going for it. We've got to defend it. We've got to keep it, get it back on track and stop these tyrants in Washington from stealing our future. Jonathan, go ahead and continue the point you left off on before the break, or you can start a new point.
Well, the irony here is that those who are rapidly spending us into oblivion are going to achieve the very same.
Okay, why don't you reconnect with Jonathan audio only?
We would achieve
Sorry, we're having some connection issues with Jonathan Emord there. Just go ahead and reconnect with him. But as I was saying, we're in so much trouble, I know some of the sponsors of this show have survival seed banks and things like that. Silver Lungs is a product that I really recommend. People, if you don't get yourself prepared this year, I mean now, really, it's already almost March of 2012. If you're not getting squared away, you're in deep, deep trouble. I mean, I've been planting trees and planting vegetables and practicing vermiculture, worm composting on my farm so I can turn food scraps into soil, and the soil can feed the plants, and the plants can keep us alive. I've been just almost urgently scrambling to get these skills together because something is coming. A collapse is coming. And let me know as soon as we have Jonathan back, guys. He's good? He's back with us? Okay. Jonathan, go. No, he's not back yet. Okay, sorry. But based on my analysis, the two most likely scenarios that we're facing are, number one, a grid down scenario, a loss of the power grid. That could be from, a high altitude nuclear blast causing an EMP wave, which was discussed by a previous guest here with Alex Jones. I believe that guest was Matthew Stein, an MIT scientist, if I'm remembering correctly. A second possibility is a bioweapon release that could be intentional or unintentional. And I'm sort of going with the intentional side from the government, the depopulation global elite who really do want to kill people. They're evil. They hate life and they want to kill us off. And a bioweapon is sadly, it's a very effective way to do that. So if you're not prepared for those two scenarios, grid down and bioweapon release, then I don't think you're prepared for the future that we may be facing. And so I really want to urge you, from me to you, all the listeners of Infowars who are really informed, who are really patriotic, who are just some of the best people, the most amazing people in the country. You are the future of our society. You're the future of the human race because you're not eating the GMOs. You're not destroying your fertility with vaccines. You're not killing yourself with all the chemicals, and you're eating the organics when you can. You're taking the superfoods when you can. You are the future of the human race. So I want to urge you to get prepared, stay alive, stay safe so that you can stay part of the solution as we restore this republic. Now, Jonathan is back with us, joining us again. Jonathan, go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yes. The irony of all this is that the government is going to be reduced in its size and scope and cost by force or by volitionally through changes that are brought about as a result of willingness to accept the reforms that are necessary. So either the government will do this volitionally or it will happen inevitably because the government simply can't sustain itself at present levels indefinitely. Cannot happen. And in fact, it's likely to cause a reduction, dissolution of the government within a decade.
What does that look like if the government doesn't rein itself in and it blows through the realistic boundaries of spending? I mean, what happens really? What, in your opinion? I see we're having connection. Okay, guys, just reconnect to him audio only. I think that'll work best.
Well, what?
Okay, I'm hearing little bits and pieces of him. Okay, I want to ask Jonathan when we reconnect with him what that looks like. And then I want to get to solutions because his book is about solutions as well as not just what's wrong. That's the thing that you get here from Alex Jones' show and Infowars is, we're going to be honest and upfront about the problems that face our society, about the loss of freedom, about the overzealous, tyrannical tendencies of the federal government and its mad departments like DHS, DEA, USDA, you name it. But we want to get to solutions. So what can we do as activists, as citizens? And so much of what you're doing out there is working. You're succeeding in getting fluoride out of the water in many cities across the country. You are succeeding in many ways of defending the Bill of Rights, of defending the Second Amendment in some areas, of at least raising the issue of defending the Fourth Amendment in many areas. Hey, even Wyoming, we covered that earlier. Wyoming is talking about having a plan to survive a national collapse. They're talking about having their own strike aircraft and their own draft and their own military if it comes to that, their own currency if it comes to that. So there are people out there who are looking at solutions and saying, how do we keep all of this alive so that we can move forward? Now, Jonathan's back with us. Go ahead, Jonathan, where you left off.
Well, this is the destruction of the republic will happen if the political people will not take the steps necessary to downsize the government dramatically. I mean, we need to do what Ron Paul's calling for, $1 trillion in spending cuts now. We can't afford $200 billion to $400 billion a year when we're spending $1.3 trillion in excess of receipts. It's just not sustainable. We have $62 trillion in entitlement commitments presently, and that figure is going to rise as the boomer population gets bigger and bigger, and federal spending commitments that are added on through Obamacare add more to the national debt. So we're in a situation that is absolutely unsustainable. The government will collapse of its own accord unless dramatic reductions take place. All right, well, what will happen? What is the sequence of events? Well, we're going to see something